Hey everyone, welcome back to my TechDecisions podcast. On this episode, we speak with my counterparts here at our parent company Emerald to discuss a new tech event that IT professionals should consider attending. The event is Commercial Integrator Expo, which is scheduled for next September from the 6th to the 9th in Denver. The event is branded after our sister publication, Commercial Integrator, a pro audiovisual integration trade brand. It will be co-located with CEDIA Expo, a huge residential technology trade show also owned by Emerald. Tell us a little bit about the history of CEDIA Expo, Commercial Integrator, and why IT professionals and their end users should attend this event. We'll welcome on Jason Knott, my boss, the Chief Content Officer and Editor-in-Chief of Residential Integration Trade Publications CE Pro, and Dan Parisi, Editor-in-Chief of Commercial Integrator. With IT professionals being tasked more and more with building out conferencing spaces and working with audiovisual service providers more than ever, this is a show that you won't want to miss. Before we get to the interviews, here's a quick reminder to check out the podcast on iTunes, Google, and Spotify to hear weekly interviews with IT experts that can help you make the right decisions for your organization. All right, welcome Jason and Dan to the TechDecisions podcast. We are talking about the Commercial Integrator Expo, which is going to be co-located with CEDIA next year. First question for you guys is, since many IT leaders and IT professionals are a little bit unfamiliar with the Pro AV industry as a whole, can you guys give us a little bit of the background behind CEDIA, Commercial Integrator, the thinking behind the co-located Commercial Integrator Expo, and how it's addressing any unmet needs?
Why don't I give a background on CEDIA, and then I can let Dan talk about this melding that's taking place between both the residential and the commercial integrators. So CEDIA, the association, was started in the early 1990s, and it's a group of low voltage integrators who focus primarily on audio and video when it first started out. These were the audio guys, the video guys that put in the home theaters, residentially only focused community. They started an expo in the mid 90s, which has just continually grown and grown as we've seen residential electronics grow. I think when they first started out, they were probably putting in, VHS tape systems and tube TVs for people. Now they're putting in full-blown audio systems, obviously, surround sound, multi-room audio systems, wireless audio, obviously, massive TVs, from not just flat panel TVs, but micro LED TVs, projection based TVs, or viewing things for dedicated rooms, lighting control, security systems with video surveillance and access control systems like video doorbells, motorized shades. It is another hot area of it. So I could go on and on. There's about 46 different categories of equipment that we track in CE Pro that these low voltage CEDIA integrators do. And CEDIA, by the way, stands for Custom Electronic Design and Installation Association, for any IT professionals out there who aren't familiar with the association. Great. So like a lot of industries, we're seeing this melding happen between the commercial and the residential space. So it started to happen really when the recession hit in 2008. The CEDIA professionals were really dependent upon new construction, new home housing construction. We all know what happened. Housing market collapsed. All these guys who were like 80, 90%, 100% in many cases, driven by new home construction, realized that they needed to diversify their businesses. So that point, 2008, 2009, they started to do more commercial installations. And by that, I mean bars and restaurants, typically the places where you now start to see TVs and sound systems, some houses of worship. Really wasn't a huge focus on the corporate market at that point, where we're talking about corporate boardrooms, and I'll let Dan expound upon that a little bit further. And then the network, of course, became the key component of all of this, because all those categories that I just talked about are really driven by the network. The network is the engine, and all those other things are the amenity in the car. if you want to use that analogy. So, so we started seeing a gradual increase in the percentage of commercial business that integrators were doing to diversify themselves. Then, of course, the pandemic hit, and there was a drop off. At one point, we saw it get all the way up to about 40%, almost 40% of their total revenues were coming from commercial installations, even though these were residentially based companies. It dropped all the way back down to 17% or 13%. I'm sorry, 13% when the pandemic hit. It's now, of course, going to start to come back. The genie's out of the bottle, so to speak. They're not going to go back and not be diverse businesses anymore. So that was really what the thinking was behind bringing Commercial Integrator Expo into the CEDIA Expo, which is this well-established event that just happened a few weeks ago. Was a big success. So Dan, I'll let you maybe expand upon it a little bit further.
Yeah, and obviously, that's really informative from the Resi side, from the traditional CEDIA custom integration side. I think the same kind of trends are prevailing on the commercial side as well. I would trace the origin of, kind of the trends I'm talking about on the commercial side, maybe more to the pandemic as opposed to the Great Recession. Thinking about some of those enterprise spaces that Jason alluded to, higher education spaces, things of that nature. As the pandemic descended on us and we started having to roll out these hybrid kind of, whether it's work from home, whether it's learn from home, or a hybridization thereof with a mix of in-person and from home, you're starting to encounter then systems and solutions that need to cross the boundaries of both the out-of-home space and the in-home space. So if you're having a corporate deployment or something like that, say you're working with JP Morgan Chase, or you're working with Barclays or something along those lines, you need not only to outfit their corporate boardroom, their meeting spaces, their huddle rooms, things of that nature, but maybe the CEO lives in Montecito and she needs to be able to remote in and have an equitable experience. People need to be able to see her and engage with her, and likewise, she needs to be able to engage with her team members. You may have employees all over the country, all over the world, hot desking. They might be going into WeWork kind of spaces, things of that nature, or working from their own homes. And that idea of meeting equity and having an equitable experience, and the same thing with education, having an equitable distance learning or hybrid learning experience, it really has forced these worlds together in a very meaningful way. You can't just be a commercial integrator anymore and say, the only thing I care about is the huddle spaces and the meeting rooms, or if I'm on a college campus, the only thing I care about are the physical, in classroom environments, or the on-campus environments, because then you're leaving people out. We want everyone, whether it's in a corporate enterprise space or in a higher education space, to be equitable, to have a full experience, no second-class citizens. And that need for no second-class citizenship has forced these worlds together. Residential world, the commercial world, and that's really going to come fully to fruition, fully to blossom at this co-located event in Denver next year with CEDIA Expo and Commercial Integrator Expo. It's going to be one badge, two shows. Your one badge is going to give you access to both, since the show floor environments will be in the same physical space in Denver. So you're going to be able to check out all the commercial and technology, all the residential technology, move back and forth. There'll be some manufacturers invariably who will have booths in both. They'll have a commercial focused booth, they'll have a residential focused booth, and that's going to empower, whether they're commercial integrators, whether they're custom integrators, whether they're end user technology managers, whether they're IT professionals, to get a taste of everything, that full ecosystem. And that full ecosystem, I think, really defines where technology is going these days. The silos are coming down, the divisions are starting to disappear to some greater or lesser extent, and we're understanding technology ecosystems in a much more holistic and much more all-encompassing kind of a way.
Great, thanks, Dan. So there's a very big emphasis for this show on encouraging end users and IT managers to come and check out all the vendors that are exhibiting, and check out any educational sessions. So why should they? What kind of technologies can they expect to learn about at the show?
Well, I think it's really about two things. I say education and relationships. So if I'm obviously professional IT manager is not going to come to this event and get schooled on what firewalls and VPNs are. They know all those sorts of things. They already are well aware of that. But just listing, as I mentioned, some of those categories of equipment that are now being tacked onto their networks that they're creating for their corporate space or education space or whatever space it is. I think it's important for them to know what are some of the devices that are being added to these, whether they're streaming video, whether they're smart lighting, whether they're control and automation, security, video surveillance systems. They need to know what some of these products are that are being tacked on to their networks. I think in the past, a lot of corporate IT managers, when they were approached by the commercial integrator, they would say, "Well, you're not touching my network. I'm not going to let this stuff." And so obviously there needed to be some sort of a separate firewall VPN scenario set up between the technology that was being added on and that base network. It's not an option, as Dan said a second ago, it's not an option to deny that it's not going to, the future is not going to be where they're going to say, "No, we don't want any of that stuff because we don't want you to touch the network." Guess what? You can't have a video surveillance system because we don't want you to touch the network. It's not going to fly. So they need to know about this equipment. The second part, as I mentioned, is relationships. As Dan mentioned, there's going to be thousands of integrators there, both commercially based integrators as well as residentially based integrators from the CEDIA space that are moving into the commercial area. And this is their chance to meet and forge relationships, understand where they're coming from, and possibly find integrators that can help them bring the solutions that they need for their locations.
Right.
Yeah, I would.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say I would amplify a lot of what Jason said, and he's driven home the point of that network centricity, and I think that really is central to this. And I want to move on to that in just a second, but I do want to just say, kind of at the outset, I'm seeing more and more an acknowledgement within commercial AV circles. I'm sure it's probably the same in custom circles that Jason travels in every day. We're recognizing that end users, especially what I would call kind of the power end users, people like Mike Peterson at Iowa State, Aaron Maher-Moran at Johns Hopkins, Joe Way at USC, they really have an outside voice these days in kind of shaping the ongoing conversation about technology deployment and technology applications. So why should they be at an event like Commercial Integrator Expo, co-located with CEDIA Expo? Because that's where that conversation is taking place. They're the tastemakers. They're people who are talking in a lot of ways about where things are going. They're observing where things are going. Why should power end users, IT managers, in-house integrators be there? Because this is where the conversation is going to be. It's going to be the hub of that conversation. Moving back to that network, though, that network centricity, I totally agree with Jason that we're seeing more and more integrators, whether they're on the custom side or on the commercial side, working hand in hand with IT managers and technology managers at this point. I just got finished with the networking deep dive with Commercial Integrator. That networking deep dive is going to be in our November issue. And the whole conversation was all about, well, are we going to have kind of a separate dedicated purpose-built AV network? Are we going to have AV systems and other kinds of technologies in our ecosystem on the corporate backbone network? These are ongoing conversations, ongoing debates. I don't think there's necessarily one answer that is uniform across all vertical markets. Some verticals and some applications prefer that separate network. Some prefer an integrated network. But the network is necessarily at least starting a dialogue. And that means that those end users, those IT professionals, those technology managers need to be at the table, and they need to be talking with the integrators. They need to be building that dialogue, building that relationship. And likewise, the integrators need to be leaning into them, learning from them, not necessarily viewing them as kind of a non-overlapping magisteria where you have your world, I have mine, and never do the two roads cross. The roads very, very much are crossing these days. But I think also, and I don't necessarily celebrate this coming from Commercial Integrator, which is a very channel-focused publication, a very channel-focused multimedia platform, we recognize that some vendors and distributors are starting to market and sell their gear directly to end users, particularly those Fortune 500 type end users that may have very well built out in-house technology teams. So why should some of those end users and technology managers be there? They may ultimately be speccing and designing and installing some of these products. Again, I don't celebrate that necessarily from the commercial integrator perspective because we're for the integrator channel. But I think it's also a fact, and I think that's one reason why they may want to be attending the co-located show. They may actually be the decision makers in some cases.
Yeah, and that's something that I've noticed, walking around the floors at different AV related trade shows that we won't mention, but a lot of these solutions are becoming easier for IT people to deploy and manage themselves, rather than contract with an integrator. But then there's still a lot of opportunity for integrators to provide services, and tack on just additional services to those products. So what kind of technologies should we expect to learn about at the show?
I mean, I think we've talked about a lot of them, but if I'm an IT professional and I'm coming to this new CEDIA Expo co-located with Commercial Integrator Expo, I'm going to see high performance audio. I'm going to learn about streaming technologies. I'm going to see amazing video from whether it's micro LED video walls or amazing projectors that could be used for digital displays. So there's so many to name. Again, I mentioned even just the crossroads of lighting. People are probably wondering, what are you talking about lighting? The whole LED revolution has changed the nature of lighting, and so that now this has become a very important category for integrators. And so if IT professionals aren't familiar with the changes that have taken place just in the lighting category alone over the last 2 years, this would be the place to come.
Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of IT professionals are kind of beginning to wrap their hands around the unified communications piece. Video conferencing, collaboration, and probably a lot of that has been helped by by Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, etc. But I think it's a lot of the other kind of AV technology, like digital signage, pro sound, like you said, lighting, that is still a little bit foreign to them. So what are some examples of resi and commercial tech merging that we're seeing that that IT professionals should begin to explore a little bit as they're starting to build out their hybrid work models?
So I'll definitely get to some of those kind of crossover technologies. I do just want to go back to the previous question just for a moment, because you had mentioned, Zach, the idea of some of the more, I guess, non-traditional technologies that end users, technology managers, IT leaders may be interested in. Something I think it's worth mentioning is the Commercial Integrator Expo is going to kind of focus on 5 key verticals or solution areas. And those are corporate/enterprise, education, resi-mercial, hospitality, and retail. So to complement what Jason said, I think that is going to give IT leaders and technology managers an opportunity to look at everything from sound reinforcement to digital signage to large format display, control systems, cameras, microphones. So it's not necessarily just kind of the conferencing and collaboration technologies that they may be working with every day. But if you're talking about, retail, if you're talking about hospitality, hotels, restaurants, you're probably also talking again about digital signage, large format display, maybe 4K or 8K displays. Maybe you're talking about direct view LED. Maybe you're talking about ceiling speakers or background music systems. So I think there's an opportunity to look at a constellation of different types of technologies. But I do, think that in terms of your question, which is what are some of these technologies that we're really seeing cross over per se, I think you're seeing a lot of it centering on the more traditional collaboration technologies. We're thinking about microphones, we're thinking about cameras, collaboration platforms, and other kind of workplace and school interaction kind of platforms to facilitate a seamless dialogue between those who are both on-site and off-site. Lighting setups. I think that's where you're seeing probably the most direct crossover, but I think that's just the tip of the iceberg for what the potential crossover could be as it comes fully to blossom, as it comes fully to fruition. And again, as we lean into with Commercial Integrator Expo, those verticals again, or corporate enterprise, education, resi-mercial, hospitality, retail, I think we're going to see more and more opportunities to look at technologies that are cross-deployable.
Yeah, Jason, anything to add? From the your expertise on the residential side.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is I thought Dan hit a good point there that, this is an opportunity for IT professionals maybe to help educate the integrator crowd too. So when they're out there building their specifications, they have specific needs, and they're whether you're putting out to bid or they're working specifically with individual integration companies, or even if it's like a government level thing where they've got to have GSA approved contractors. I think educating this community of integration professionals on what the needs are at the end user level it's a two-way street. So they're not just going to be there to learn. I think it's going to be their opportunity to mingle with these folks and talk to them about, hey, this is what I need if I'm going to be able to do a video wall in this facility, or digital projection, or something of that nature. So no, I think it's going to be a great learning experience. I'm excited to see the education be pulled together in terms of how we can kind of maybe ease this interaction that we were just talking about between end users and the integration community, and hopefully it becomes something that's fruitful for both entities.
I couldn't agree more with Jason on that idea of learning from each other, leaning into the opportunity to dialogue and learn from each other. When I talk to integrators, when I'm in integration circles, what I hear more than anything is that we want not to be a contractor. We want not to be, just someone you sign a contract with, we do a job and then we're out the door. We want to be a trusted strategic advisor. And the only way that an integrator can be a trusted strategic advisor to, whether it's an end user organization like a higher education institution, a corporate enterprise, is to dialogue readily with all parties and be willing to listen, be willing to learn, be willing to share knowledge. That is the crux of being an integrator from my perspective, from Commercial Integrators' perspective, in terms of running your integration company better and not being an old-fashioned 1980s style contractor. So Commercial Integrator Expo, co-located with CEDIA Expo, is going to create those dialogues. It's going to create an atmosphere and an environment where people can learn from each other. They can enhance their business operations, and they can facilitate and seed partnerships that potentially could reap incredible benefits in the years to come. So I think this is not just going to be a technology show. It's not just going to be an education show. It's going to be a real networking hub and an opportunity to learn from each other and grow with each other and lean into a transformation that's going to potentially yield far better experiences and far better outcomes for all stakeholders across both commercial and custom.
Something to think about too, it just reminded me of, I know years ago, they used to always say that a lot of the advancements that happened in the video space were driven by the porn industry. If the porn industry adopted it, then it drove itself down to, whether it be higher performance VHS or whatever it might have been at the time. So there is a lot of technology in this crossover of where's the technology being driven from? Is it coming from the commercial side to Resi, or is it coming from Resi into commercial? It's kind of a two-way street there too on the technology side. And I'll just point out two technologies that I believe that IT professionals should become aware of and commercial integrators should become aware of, that are coming from the Resi space and then going to push themselves up much more emphatically into the commercial space. One would be voice control. And I think you're going to see that interactive office, that's voice control based office, at some point in our lives, it's going to happen. And that is really a residentially based topic, or technology, I should say. And then the second would be just streaming video and streaming audio. I mean, we all now stream things to our phone on a consistent basis. And I think we're going to see the proliferation of that streaming take place much more on the commercial space. And that was really another residentially a technology that started on the residential side of the business. And I could sure that Dan could list off a million things on the commercial side, video walls being a perfect example. We're now hearing from integrators who are having customers take out their two-piece projection systems in favor of micro LED video walls. These we all see them in airports and different things like that. They're brighter. They don't have to warm up. They turn on immediately. They don't require the same amount of real estate in a home. So there are obviously quirks that need to be taken care of there in terms of the power usage and wall reinforcement and those sorts of things, because they're heavy. But that's a perfect example of a technology that started on the commercial side and is now moving its way into the resi side.
Right.
And I was just going to say, what's really interesting is also in many of these cases, say you're talking about a CEO or something like that. She may be building out a really impressive home theater setup or some kind of, integrated system voice control setup in her home. And then she might say, well, you know what? I would love for you, the integrator I'm working with, to do something in my office as well. There's so much opportunity, I think, to leverage existing clients, and then it ends up crossing these kind of invisible boundaries between commercial and residential. And just interestingly, I was speaking to a number of commercial integrators at CEDIA Expo, talking about the co-location coming up in 2023. Some of them say they embrace that kind of work. Some of them say, you know what, I'm a commercial integrator. I never want to go into someone's home. I never want to deal with someone's distance learning setup. But what I want to do is find a residential or a custom partner that I trust, that I believe in, that I can stand shoulder to shoulder with. They can refer work to me. I can refer work to them, so that when a client comes to me or a potential client comes to me and say, I don't simply want my home set up, I also want my office set up, or vice versa, we can say, well, we have that covered. I don't do all of this, but I have someone I work hand in hand with. And it gives you that kind of one-stop shop solution without someone having to expand beyond their core competencies or their comfort levels. So I think it again reinforces what I've been trying to drive, I think, as part of this conversation, that the co-location is going to be an incredible opportunity to forge connections and network. So it's not only for end user technology managers and IT professionals to learn about technologies they may be deploying themselves, and to begin dialogues with integrators who may be working on their network or setting up a parallel dedicated AV network on their corporate campus. It also is giving integrators themselves an opportunity to network and mix and find ways to partner with each other and leverage each other's strengths. We're all in this together, in the sense that we're all technology solutions providers. And I think that end users, the people you speak to every day, Zach, are probably looking for exactly that. They're looking for technology solutions providers. They don't want to have 18 dedicated contractors focused on one tiny little bit of the ecosystem. So I think Commercial Integrator Expo, co-located with CEDIA Expo, is capturing the zeitgeist of the moment, because it's going to be that place where technology solution providers are born. That's what they're going to be born in that cauldron, in that crucible.
Great. Yeah, and kind of hitting on that merging of commercial and residential tech, I think the pandemic kind of accelerated a lot of it. So I mean, when you're at home at your home office, plugging a camera into your USB port on your laptop and firing up a Zoom meeting is super easy. But when you go into the office, there's a lot of different moving pieces and different devices, integrated cameras, speakers, microphones. It can be a little bit complex, both for end users to use and for IT to manage. And I think the pandemic accelerated a lot of simplification of those kind of systems. And similarly, I mean, if you're sitting on your couch, firing up your TV is you just click a button. And, I think we want the same kind of ease of use when we go into the office and you want to, fire up a digital display, if we're giving a presentation, or if it's like an all-in-one video conferencing display, we want the same, ease of use. And we, if it's not easy to use, then we're not being productive, essentially.
I'll add on to that, not just ease of use, but secure. So
Yes.
Think of that, the unsecured Wi-Fi, the number of personal devices that are now plugged in when people are working from home. Think of the phone, the video conference calls where they didn't put in the passcode and they get hacked, the unsecured phone system. So that whole melding of the work from home environment is kind of one of the crossover points between the two groups of integrators that is already a keen interest of IT professionals. That cybersecurity.
Oh yeah, it is.
Again, if there's one point that they can drive home, where I think the integrators could certainly learn from your audience, Zach, is going to be the importance of cybersecurity.
Absolutely. 100%
Yeah.
agree.
It is absolutely essential. And I've been talking to some extent about the idea of, dedicated networks versus combined networks, and the idea of cybersecurity, the necessity of having enterprise-grade cybersecurity, especially for homeland security kind of clients, government clients, healthcare clients, where there might be personally identifiable healthcare information. All these conversations are essential these days. And I know that our integrator audience wants to learn more. They want to know more. And I think people who, consume TechDecisions and its content, your audience, your readership, are very well positioned to teach the integration channel a lot of what they want to know. And we may be able to teach things as well, not necessarily about cybersecurity, but we have information to share. The TechDecisions community has information to share. And what better way to do that than to bring everyone together in Denver, where all the technology is going to be there, the education sessions are going to be there. And it's just a perfect opportunity to learn from each other. And again, embrace this idea of being technology solution providers, whether it's the integrator channel providing that solution to the end user, or whether it's the IT manager facilitating it for their own, in-house people. We're all trying to create technology solutions that meet and exceed expectations. I think when people leave Denver in 2023, they're going to be better positioned to meet and exceed customers and clients and users and team members' technology expectations.
Absolutely. It's funny. We're talking about audiovisual technology. A lot of it, most of it is devices and, IoT devices, and security-minded IT professionals have. It's not really a joke. It's more of like a warning, I guess. They call it the Internet of Threats rather than the Internet of Things, which I think says a lot about the security mindset of those kind of devices. Well, guys, thanks very much. I appreciate your time. And one more thing, where can we go to learn more about Commercial Integrator Expo?
So you can go to expo.commercialintegrator.com. You have all the information you need to know there. And I know that there'll be continuing exciting announcements in the weeks and months ahead as more partnerships are formalized and as plans are fully put into place. But I can say I've been covering the commercial AV industry for 18 years in various capacities. This is one of the very most, if not the single most exciting thing that I've been part of. I think it's really meeting a market need. And again, if we're talking about being experienced facilitators, smile generators, memory makers, we're trying to create these indelible impressions, this is the place where we're going to create a roadmap and set forth a vision to make that happen. So that makes me really excited, because I don't just cover this industry, I believe in it, I try to be an advocate for it. I feel like there's so much we as an organization have to give, and I can't wait to see it come to fruition.
Great. All right. Thanks very much, guys.